Peace to everybody. This story is about Jack the Ripper. He was finally identified by DNA evidence. Just as a reminder, I do not know certain words because I've never seen them before and I don't know how to pronounce them, but I can try and shorten them. And I am pretty sure you are the same way too, that can't pronounce words that are you've never seen before. Researchers say they have finally unmasked Jack the Ripper, the infamous serial killer who terrorized London in the late 1800s. So they finally unmasked him, and who he was terrorizing in the late 1800s. Finally, a forensic investigation published in Journal of Forensic Sciences identified the killer as Aaron Kamiński, a 23-year-old Polish barber and prime suspect at the time. So Aaron Kamiński was his name. He was 23 years old at the time, and he was a Polish barber and a prime suspect at that time. Kamiński was previously named as a suspect over 100 years ago, and once again in a 2014 book by British businessman and Ripper researcher Russell Edwards. But the latest finding marks the first time that Edwards' DNA evidence has been published in a peer-reviewed journal, according to the magazine Science. So it was over 100 years ago he was a suspect, and then they accused him of being a suspect again in 2014. Now, that is a long time to be having somebody as a suspect for that amount of time. And of course, Russell Edwards, he has been finding marks for the first time, DNA evidence. He wrote it down to know what the DNA evidence are. To our knowledge, this is the most advanced study to date regarding this case, the study authors wrote. So this is the most up-to-date case that they can do, even though I guess they couldn't solve it back then because things were a little crazy back then in the 1800s, so they kind of figured, well, we're going to keep studying this case until we know who they are, and so that they did. Jack the Ripper is believed to have killed at least 5 women in the Whitechapel district of London between August and November of 1888. Researchers Jari Liu and David Miller ran genetic tests on a silk shawl stained with blood and semen that investigators say was found next to the body of the killer's 4th victim, Catherine Eddowes, Science reported. So there was a shawl that had blood and semen on him. I guess he must have sexually abused them before he killed his victims. And so now that the blood and semen have been tested, that was found next to the victims. So, and of course, Catherine Eddowes was one of them. And there's 4 other women somewhere around that he had killed, as much as the woman that the investigators found next to the woman that he killed. Researchers compared fragments of mitochondrial DNA with the magazine noted is inherited from one's mother to samples from living relatives of Eddowes and Kamiński, and found they matched those of Kamiński's relatives. So they pretty much did the DNA match to see if they were relatives or not, and of course it turned out to be. The study also includes an analysis of the killer's appearance, which suggests the killer had brown hair and brown eyes, which matches the only reliable witness statement according to Science. So Jack the Ripper, he had brown hair, brown eyes, and they did match to who he is, and it was a reliable witness statement that identified him. The study's findings may not satisfy other Ripper experts who say the shawl may have been contaminated over the years. The shawl was given to Lou by Edwards, a self-proclaimed armchair detective and author of Naming Jack the Ripper, who bought it at an auction in 2007, according to The Guardian. Oh, wow. So Lou gave it to or the shawl was given to Lou by Edwards, and he was a self-proclaimed armchair detective, which I kind of find that a little ironic. And he was also the author naming Jack the Ripper, and and it was bought at an auction in 2007. Do we know how much for? No, we don't know how much it was for, but over the years it had been contaminated, or it may have been contaminated. It all depends on which way it was going for the evidence to be tested. I've got the only piece of forensic. Excuse me, I'm sorry, it just does this by itself. I've got the only piece of forensic evidence in the whole history of the case. He told the newspaper in 2014, "I've spent 14 years working on it, and we have definitively solved the mystery of who Jack the Ripper was." So he's been working on it for 14 years, and that is a very long time of working on this case. And now that they know who Jack the Ripper was, and it took them this long, and it's really it was really an unsolved case until now, that it had finally became viral of who he is. Anyways, tell me in the comments below what you think about this, and I am sorry that the one part had kind of went by itself. I didn't know. I am out.